Welcome back, sharks. As always, before we begin, a quick reminder that our Welcome Moon giveaway is still ongoing. As a return bonus, I'll be giving away 5 Welcome Moons, so if you want a chance to win, be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Now, when you first look at Zibai and Illuga, it's obvious that Hoyoverse is trying to redefine what geo damage actually means. Instead of pushing raw multipliers or simple on-field carries, both of these kits are built around Lunar-Crystallize as a primary damage engine. On paper, that sounds powerful, but in reality, it comes with more conditions than the numbers initially suggest. Quick disclaimer, this video is mainly about understanding how each kit works on its own. I'll briefly touch on how Illuga supports Zibai later, but this is not a you need both characters argument. If anything, it's about seeing where the real power is coming from and where it quietly falls apart. So let's start with Zibai. Zibai is a def-scaling Geo on-field DPS whose entire gameplay loop revolves around entering lunar phase shift. Once she activates her elemental skill, all of her normal and charged attacks become Geo damage that cannot be overridden. That immediately locks her into an on-field role, because swapping out means losing access to the stance that her damage is balanced around. While lunar phase shift is active, Zibai begins generating phase shift radiance both passively and through her normal attacks. This resource is then spent to cast Spirit Steed Stride, which is where the majority of her damage actually comes from. The second hit of that skill is treated as Lunar-Crystallize reaction damage, meaning it scales very differently from her base Geo hits. This is important, because Zibai's normal attack multipliers, even at talent level 10, are not exceptional on their own. Her raw Geo damage is serviceable, but it is not what carries the kit. The real damage is locked behind repeated Lunar-Crystallize triggers, which means her performance is directly tied to uptime, hydro application, and how efficiently you convert radiance into Spirit Steed casts. That's where the first set of limitations starts to show. At CO, lunar phase shift lasts 15 seconds, but Zibai is forced out of the stance early after using Spirit Steed Stride for times. That means your rotation isn't just about staying on field, it's about not wasting radiance generation and not missing reaction windows. If hydro application drops, or if radiance is mismanaged, her damage falls off hard. This makes her damage profile very uneven. Zibai has clear spikes when Spirit Steed Stride lands, followed by noticeable downtime where she's mostly dealing modest def-scaled Geo hits. The kit looks explosive, but it's surprisingly fragile in real combat scenarios where enemy movement or reaction inconsistency becomes a factor. Her Ascension passives reinforce this identity even further. Zibai gains additional Lunar-Crystallize damage scaling based on her def, and her team composition bonuses strongly push Geo and Hydro teammates. This isn't optional optimization, it's a requirement. Without Hydro, Lunar-Crystallize simply doesn't exist, and without Geo teammates, her def scaling ceiling drops. Constellations then take this already rigid structure and push it much harder. C1 removes a large part of her setup friction by immediately granting maximum radiance and increasing Spirit Steed usage. C2 massively inflates Lunar-Crystallize damage, not just for Zibai, but for the entire team. And by the time you reach C6, radiance becomes something you dump all at once for an absurd damage spike. The problem is that this creates a very clear gap between Zibai at CO and Zibai at higher investment. At base, she feels carefully balanced and occasionally clunky. However, with constellations, she starts to look overwhelming, but only because many of her original restrictions are being removed. Moving on, let's talk about Illuga. Illuga is not a traditional DPS, and he isn't meant to be one. His kit is designed around amplification rather than ownership of damage. Everything he does feeds into boosting Geo damage, Lunar-Crystallize reactions, or both. His elemental skill deals a large instance of Geo damage that scales off both elemental mastery and def, but its real value is consistency. It's a reliable Geo hit on a short cooldown that helps maintain reaction uptime without demanding field time. Illuga's elemental burst is where the kit becomes more complex. When activated, he gains Nightingale's song stacks, which are consumed whenever nearby party members deal Geo damage. Each stack consumed increases the damage dealt, with additional scaling if that damage comes from Lunar-Crystallize. What this means in practice is that Illuga turns every Geo hit into something more dangerous, but only as long as stacks remain. Against single targets, this is efficient and controlled. Against groups, stacks disappear rapidly, and the buff window collapses faster than the 20-second duration implies. Illuga's scaling is also very telling. His buffs are almost entirely tied to elemental mastery, not ATK or crit. That positions him as a reaction amplifier first and foremost, rather than a universal Geo buffer. His passives further reinforce this by granting crit stats, elemental mastery, and def to the team when his effects are active. Constellations follow the same philosophy. Early constellations improve energy economy and add additional damage instances tied to stat consumption. Later constellations heavily inflate crit bonuses and elemental mastery sharing, turning Illuga into a much stronger enabler but still not a carry. Briefly touching on synergy, Illuga and Zibai clearly work well together. ILLUGA'S M-based Lunar-Crystallize amplification lines up perfectly with Zibai's reaction-centric damage profile. That said, this synergy doesn't suddenly make Zibai independent or Illuga mandatory. Zibai still lives and dies by reaction uptime and radiance management, and Illuga still requires a geo-focused team to justify his slot. So, yeah, in the end, both kits are well designed, but highly specialized. Zibai is a carry whose power is locked behind execution and investment, while Illuga is an enabler who looks incredible on paper, but only truly shines in the right environment. Overall, neither character is universally broken. They are powerful within a very narrow framework, and whether that's worth the investment depends entirely on how much you're willing to build around Lunar-Crystallize. So yeah, that's all we have for today, Sharks. Let me know in the comments, are you pulling for Zibai and Illuga, or are you skipping for someone else down the line? Remember to like, subscribe, and join the Welcome Moon giveaway while it's still running. And with everything said, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.